Hello and welcome to episode 246 of the Ideal Nutrition Podcast. My name is Aidan Muir and I'm here with my co-host Torwen Eerkens, and today we're going to be talking about GLP-1s, so Ozempic, Wegovy, and then all of the other ones we'll talk about. One of the reasons I want to talk about this is it's a popular topic right now and it absolutely will only be getting more popular in my opinion. And it's something I want to create content on, but there's two handbrakes I've got. So one handbrake is I feel like it's hard to talk about on Instagram in short form content. The other handbrake in terms of blog content is we actually did have a really good blog written by Tyler on our website, which we had to take down because we run Google Ads, and Google Ads wouldn't run if the name Ozempic was anywhere on our website. Just to do with some like health advertising rules. So I am going podcast for this one. So that's why we're here. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to do a bit of background on it. We're going to talk about the different types of medications, our general philosophy on them just in general. And then we're going to go through the nutrition considerations, because a large portion of what I do want to talk about is like, if you're on this, like what should you do from a nutrition perspective to make the most of it? What should you do about nutrition in general? But I think to get to that, we also really want to talk about the other stuff first.
So what are GLP-1 medications? Essentially what they are is they act as anti-obesity medications. They are GLP-1 receptor agonists, which mimic the hormone glucagon-like peptide 1, which is naturally released in the gut after eating. The way that this then works is it slows gastric emptying, it increases satiety signals in the brain, reduces appetite and your interest in food, and also helps improve insulin response and potentially reduce post-meal blood glucose. In total effect then, people often eat less, they feel fuller faster, and they lose weight.
Going further on that, one of the reasons why the medications are such a breakthrough, if you want to view them that way, is this hormone naturally in our body typically lasts around 2 minutes. The synthetic versions like semaglutide can last for around 7 days. I made an Instagram story on this the other day, but there are so many people on Instagram who are saying, eat X food because it raises GLP-1 naturally. And they're not wrong. It just isn't moving the needle because it's only lasting for like 2 minutes. Another angle is this whole thing that people refer to, which is food noise, and how taking GLP-1s can reduce food noise. This is related to like a bit of a reward dampening effect in the brain, and it can also extend to other things. Like people are looking at it for ADHD as well. People are looking at it for other things such as gambling, alcohol addiction, and a few other things in that. There are many, like Lisha's working in practice with people, there are many people who I speak to who say that they've had massive changes in these behaviours the moment they got onto these medications as well.
In terms of the type of GLP-1 medications that are available, there are a few. So I'm going to list through the majority that are. So in terms of semaglutide, which you might know as Ozempic, and Wegovy, those are GLP-1 medications, along with liraglutide, which is Saxenda. In terms of tirzepatide, which is known as Mounjaro, it is a GLP-1 medication, but it's actually a dual agonist. So it's also a GIP agonist as well. Retatrutide is a newer triple agonist which is emerging, which actually is a GLP-1, GIP, and one other agonist too. The main difference with those is the potency, the dosing frequency, and then the weight loss magnitude that is possible too.
So we had a system, so I wouldn't monologue here. I think I am going to monologue though. I've got a bit to say. So anyway, I'm going to start with a bit of like history to a degree in terms of the order that these medications came out. So liraglutide or Saxenda was the first one that really kind of hit the scene. There had previously been weight loss medications before this, but this one to a degree was a bit of a breakthrough because some of the other ones either had quite consistent downsides that almost everyone would experience, or sometimes they would need to be cycled. So people would use them for a bit, then come off. And almost by definition, anything that like suppresses your appetite, if you come off, it's kind of a recipe for yo-yo dieting. Obviously there's ways around that, right? But like this is the first one that was like, didn't have as many of those downsides, and you could also take long term. Research typically found that Saxenda, or fines because people still use it, but like about a 5 to 10% extra weight loss versus placebo when people were attempting to follow the same nutrition and exercise plan. This is a key point that I'm going to go with here. Everything I'm going to refer to is people attempting to follow the same exercise and nutrition plan because that's what we care about. Emphasis on the word attempt, because that doesn't mean they're eating the same calories and doing the same exercise. It means they're attempting to do the same thing. And the medications could facilitate it, making it easier to do these things or improving the odds of that. Then we've got Semaglutide or Ozempic or Wegovy, so that this is the most well-known GLP-1 medication. For those who don't know, Ozempic and Wegovy are the same medication, so it's semaglutide, just under different brand names, and they're also approved at different dosages. So Ozempic is just for type 2 diabetes. Something that I have previously found as a bit of a frustrating comment on Instagram and stuff like that is when people say, Ozempic is for people with diabetes. We have a lot of good medications for diabetes. Up until this kind of Ozempic kind of thing, we didn't really have much good for weight loss. Semaglutide was one of the biggest kind of breakthroughs. I'm going to talk about my general thoughts, so I don't want to seem too pro these medications or anything like that. I have a lot of reasons that I would consider myself neutral, but it almost feels like I have to defend them to a degree because a lot of people have a negative opinion. But there wasn't much for weight loss, and I'm like, I think we shouldn't put it all in this basket. But technically, the comment that Ozempic is for type 2 diabetes is accurate, because that is what the medication is approved for. Wegovy, which is also semaglutide, is for weight loss. Ozempic is typically a 0.25 to 1 milligram per week dosage. Wegovy is a higher dosage at 2.4 milligrams per week as a once-a-week injection. And although, of course, people build up to that dosage, there is a newer pill form of Wegovy now that's a daily 25 to 50 milligram dosage as well, which researchers had some pretty positive findings on too in terms of weight loss. For this, why it's considered a breakthrough is that research was often finding an extra 15% weight loss from semaglutide versus placebo that is typically maintained while people are on the medication. Different story if people come off the medication, but while they maintain it, it seems to be working well. So we have tirzepatide, which is either Mounjaro or Zepbound, and that's the double agonist, as you were saying, Torwen. And this is a GLP-1 and a GIP, which is a gastric inhibitory polypeptide. It just has a few additional benefits. If needed, this can reduce this nausea side effect of Ozempic a little bit. It improves insulin sensitivity and can technically redistribute visceral fat amongst a few other things. Mounjaro is the diabetes version. Zepbound is the weight loss version. Research often finds around a 20% extra weight loss from tirzepatide versus placebo. Getting better and better here, right? I said to a lot of people earlier on that I was like, I just think these things are going to get better over time. Personally, I didn't realize that the weight loss in terms of numbers were going to get better as quickly as they kind of have. Retatrutide. Fun fact, technically it's not pronounced that way. I heard a doctor on Instagram pronounce it properly and make the point that everyone's saying it wrong. I'm going to call it retatrutide because in 2026, early 2026, this is how everybody pronounces it. But fun fact, it's not that. Anyway, but it is a triple agonist, which also targets glucagon as well. One of the reasons it stands out is because it's not just through this mechanism of suppressing appetite, which it does, it has a huge benefit there, but it also increases energy expenditure, which therefore makes it even easier to get into a calorie deficit. Early data has found almost a 30% extra weight loss, but it's still in trials and it's not approved yet. I have put all of the research for these numbers that I've spoken about in the show notes. One thing, if you go digging, that you'll find is that 30% number that I just quoted is not a published study just yet. That's actually just an investor release from, I think this is Eli Lilly, I don't know. It's an investor release. So I don't want to stake the claim that is exactly what happens on retatrutide. But in February 2026, that's the data that we have available. And you can see why people are interested from that, because that's 30% extra weight loss while attempting to follow the same diet and exercise kind of routine.
Which is a massive number when we put it into that context. So 30% just by taking an additional medication is huge. Like you said, it's not actually available yet, but it's very likely that this will be coming out and be available in sometime soon. In terms of our general philosophy on GLP-1 medications, I'll give my thoughts first and then Aidan, you add your 2 cents. But personally, I am not opposed to using it as a weight loss tool, especially if you've already tried weight loss for a long period of time. Appetite is a big limiting factor for you for weight loss. And that, like you mentioned, that food noise is a big aspect for you, whether it's emotional eating or any other form of food noise. The goal for me is then supporting changes in body composition while protecting your lean mass, bone density, and long-term metabolic health, but also making sure that whatever changes you make while on a GLP-1 medication is a lifestyle change that you can maintain after the weight loss. So I do really think that anyone who is prescribed a GLP-1 medication, it is so worth seeing a dietitian, and we'll talk through why. But personally, I think it almost should be part of that prescription process.
Yeah, I'm actually surprisingly on board with that. I've got bias because I run a dietitian business, but I have seen a bit of advocacy from Dietitians Australia for if somebody gets this prescription, they should also get a dietitian referral at the same time. that would benefit my business, so I would love that. And I also think it would benefit the patients as well, but that's my own 2 cents. In terms of my general philosophy, I think like all medications, they have pros and cons. They cost money and they come with side effects in a lot of cases. Almost no medication has no side effects, but these medications do have side effects. I'd rather just look at the pros and cons and then decide from there. I think some people like view it as a bit of a moral thing in terms of, is this good, is this bad? But it's like, if you are aware of the side effects and any risks associated with it, and you were weighing up the pros and cons, I think that that's fair for you to make a decision from there. One of the odd things that I do want to point to is that some people think weight loss needs to be hard and it needs to be earned. I don't think that's true. There are many people in this world who maintain relatively lean physiques without that much effort. It's not an even playing field. And even if it was, why is it a bad thing if somebody found something that makes it easy for them to achieve their goals that could improve their health? Like, why is that a bad thing? When I talk about the even playing field, some people just have a larger appetite than others. If hypothetically there was a breakthrough that had no side effects, which is not true because these have side effects, but if there was, that reduced their appetite by 20%, I still think there's people in this world who would be like, nah, but that's bad. Like, they wouldn't think about it too deeply, but some people do have a bit of stigma around this. Other people would say it doesn't teach you how to eat healthy. I agree. This is also part of why I have that advocacy of like, I do think it's good to have dietitian involvement. But it also doesn't prevent you from learning that either. I think everybody should know heaps about nutrition and live a healthy lifestyle. If anything, I'm an advocate for that, which is why I think there should be dietitian referrals. But I'm just pointing out that the medication doesn't stop that either. In some cases, it could help that. I do think I'm relatively neutral, and if somebody wants to take these medications, I want to do everything I can to help them with their nutrition. A conversation Torwen and I that we had off air, like probably, I don't know, like months ago or something like that, was possibly the different types of people we see on these medications. I have a very skewed bias because everybody who's coming to see me is paying a decent amount of money and is very keen to work on their nutrition. And in many cases are quite intelligent as well. So like I'm seeing these people who are like very motivated, very keen, very whatever. And that's the type of person I'm seeing.
On the other hand, I guess I often see people who their GP has prescribed this as a very quick, easy fix. Maybe they're not so invested in terms of their health and making long-term changes, which means it is almost a bit of a band-aid that we need to already increase that interest in lifestyle, food, that sort of thing to support the GLP-1 medication.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely levels to this. And then there would also be people who's another layer different from that where they get recommended to see a dietitian and then they choose not to see the dietitian as well. So I don't know. Lots to think about. So anyway, that's kind of like our stances on it. I do very much consider myself neutral. I want people to weigh up the pros and cons, so on and so forth. If it sounds like I'm like positive on these things, I just think it's almost as if I kind of have to defend it because like no one else will to a degree. Anyway, or like I do think that most people who are quote unquote pro are people looking for quick fixes, so on and so forth. Anyway, try to give a nuanced take there. Take from that what you will. We are now going to talk about nutrition considerations. So like a little bit earlier, you pointed to some of the common things you would want to help people with. Like a lot of things that people point to is lean mass loss. If I was going to talk about the pendulum swings here, there's one number that gets quoted a lot that people on Ozempic or Wegovy have. They often lose up to 40% of mass coming from lean mass. If you actually look at the data, that's actually not even a true claim. There is one portion of a study where people lost around 40% of their mass coming from lean mass. If you just looked at people on Ozempic or Wegovy in general, it's better than that. It's not good though. This is one of my biggest priorities. And if people lose a lot of lean mass, it's not really the medication that's causing this directly. It's more of an indirect thing. If you lose a lot of weight and you don't exercise and you don't have a good protein intake, you're guaranteed to lose a lot of lean mass. How do we solve this? I think everyone should be doing exercise. I think everyone should be doing some form of resistance training, ideally. That massively helps with this. But because we're here to talk about protein or nutrition, keeping a relatively high protein intake. Some things that can make this difficult is nausea, which we can talk about later. Obviously, lack of appetite. And we can address the lack of appetite to a degree with smaller frequent meals if we want to do that. Prioritizing protein as a larger percentage of intake in general, even if your overall intake is smaller. And then also liquid options too, which would be easy to get down, whether that's like a like general like whey protein or something like that, whether it's like Rokeby Farms protein drinks, or whether it's protein water is another option, particularly if it's not just collagen based, if there is like whey or something in there as well.
And then also emphasising a high biological value of that protein, especially because appetite is suppressed. So ideally looking at things like animal sources, like you said, whey-based proteins, which are a complete amino acid profile, less than things like lentils or beans, which are a lot more fibre, a lot more volume to get that same amount of protein in. So that makes a lot of sense. And then prioritising eating that protein at a meal first.
And you mentioned fibre.
Fibre, let's chat about it. So it's really important to maintain fibre for gut health and obviously micronutrient intake, but it's a little bit more nuanced due to that appetite suppressant because fibre does add a lot of extra volume to the meal. So again, my thoughts here are adding smaller amounts in across the day, which will help. Or again, liquid options are easy. If you're adding things into a smoothie, you can add frozen berries, spinach, chia seeds, all those sorts of things that are less likely to affect appetite in that moment, and you're able to take that. Or considering supplementation to help with side effects as well.
Yeah, and like one of the side effects, one of the most common ones that often will stop people taking the supplement is constipation. And there's many reasons why, like food literally is moving through slower as well. And you've got the combined less total amount of food and the lower fibre intake. If I was going to go with a fibre supplement, the most common one I would go with this is psyllium husk. I almost like proactively add that for a lot of people before they even get issues. It's one of the first things I'd consider.
So do I, and especially looking at what day they take it, it's often that they get worse symptoms around the day that they do the injection or the day after or the day after that. So making sure that you're really on top of it all the time, and then especially around then too.
I've got a bit of a spiel now that I want to talk about with meal timing and volume because we've both talked about like spreading stuff out across the day, to a degree small, frequent meals. There is a problem that I want to share. And this stems from a lot of work I've done in the bariatric surgery space. And I would view bariatric surgery as a more extreme version of weight loss medications where they have limited capacity to eat food. There's a saying, and it's, show me where I'm going to die so I never go there. And I think it actually is kind of relevant here with bariatric surgery where if you looked at people who have regained weight post-bariatric surgery, not 100%, but almost 100% of people, the way they have gotten there is liquid calories or frequent meals. And the logic here is if you have a limited capacity, to get into a calorie surplus, you still do need to have a decent amount of calories. How do you get there if you have a limited capacity? And the ways around it is frequent meals or having, and it doesn't have to be meals, it can be frequent snacks, right? But just frequent eating occasions or liquid calories. Often people are eating like 10 plus times a day, and that's one way around it. And the other one is, as I said, liquids. And it creates this conundrum when we're trying to tick some nutrition boxes where if somebody had very few meals, it'd be very hard to get enough protein, get enough micronutrients, so on and so forth. So I kind of set a bit of an informal cap at around 6 eating occasions in a day, where it might make it more difficult to meet certain targets, whether it's protein, fiber, or so on and so forth. But it solves the, show me where I'm going to die so I never go there, because it kind of like, it still allows you to take advantage of the appetite suppression effects of the medication as well without getting around that to tick other boxes as well.
I'm with you on that one. I like 3, if we're looking at meals, 3 snacks often works really well to make sure that it's not that constant grazing, which is essentially going to not give you those effects of the reason that you're taking that medication.
Yeah.
Should we chat about supplements then?
I've got one more before that. So other gastro stuff, so like reflux and nausea. So nausea, this is an interesting one because, and it's interesting that like Manjaro or the tirzepatide equivalents, like they can reduce this a bit, and Retta should do that as well. But it's one of the most common things that does pop up on these as well, in addition to constipation. And something that people have pointed out is this the medication, which it could be, right? Because we do have the delayed gastric emptying. Or is this also just what happens when you're in a massive calorie deficit? Do a massive calorie deficit without these medications, and you'll often experience some nausea as well. So to get around that, one thing that aligns with kind of what we just spoke, but like not having massive meals helps. Chewing food really well helps. A lot of people don't naturally do that, and it's just another incentive to do that as well. Technically, medication is an option. I know a lot of people would view that negatively. So ondansetron is an example of a medication that would help with that. But that gets into the territory of like, do we just take another medication to solve the problem created by a medication? Like, whatever your views are on that. But like one thing I'd point out is like sometimes people are suffering pretty horrific nausea, and this could be a simple solution. And then another one is ginger. So ginger is pretty well documented for helping with nausea, and that would be one of the first things I would look at if somebody was suffering from that.
That makes a lot of sense. In terms of adding on to that, I guess we can talk about this in the supplement section, but also before that, is another part of the nutrition, but like we said at the start, another part of our priority is maintaining bone mineral density. Because again, rapid weight loss is a risk for bone loss as well. Now, this is especially important in postmenopausal women who already have that risk of a lower bone mineral density, perimenopausal women, people who are, again, not doing resistance training and having that low protein intake. So like Aidan said before, strength training is another way to help that. It's that stimulus. It helps to make sure that your body is aiming to preserve bone mass, adequate protein, also adequate calcium, making sure that you're getting enough calcium across the day. So 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams a day, that's for males and females, is typically a pretty good guide to use. That can be a lot, especially if you are reducing overall intake of food. So this would definitely be one that I would consider supplementing if there are gaps in the diet there.
Yeah. And how we're speaking about how I've got a bit of a skewed sample size, 100% of people I've worked with on these medications have all gotten DEXA scans throughout their journey, and 100% of them have gained bone mineral density. If you just look at the average, like people lose, but like what skews it, 100% of people I'm working with are lifting weights. 100% of them are prioritizing protein intake. They're prioritizing calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, so on and so forth. But it's food for thought that like the majority of these people, in my case, just the sample size I'm working with, are often in their 30s and 40s. Most people who are in their 30s and 40s are not gaining bone mineral density just in general, they're losing. So like really prioritizing this stuff can go quite far. The medication doesn't cause that loss. It's just something that typically comes alongside if low exercise load, all of these other nutrients. On that topic though, something that I would also consider, if your micronutrient intake is going to be lower than optimal, I would have a multivitamin. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. It's something that I would consider in a lot of cases with people on these medications.
And also, just because we're talking about bone mineral density as well, making sure that you've got vitamin D sufficiency. So getting a blood test, making sure that's okay, and supplementing there if needed too. In terms of other supplements, should we run it through any others that we consider are worth taking? Or was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't have anything too interesting. Like I'm obviously an advocate for creatine for most people lifting and stuff like that, but like nothing too specific for this. Have you got anything more that you've got?
Yeah, there was a few others that I had there as well. So in terms of omega-3s, again, just in terms of not having as much food, that's one that can drop really quickly, especially if you're not having much fatty fish. Consider taking it in the morning, not at night, again, for that reflux, just making sure that you're not laying down after having omega-3 or fish oil tablets. And then considering convenience, using something like a protein powder to get in protein without big meal volume is always easy as well.
Cool. All right, well, we'll wrap up there. So hopefully people have gotten value from this. If you are on GLP-1s, you've kind of got the vibe already, but we obviously really encourage working with a dietitian as well. I think there's so much value to be had. But yeah, hopefully some of this was interesting, and if you learned anything, we'd massively appreciate a rating and review as well. So thank you.